Lenwo Mwetkoshai. Remember October of 1962 when the world as we know it almost ended? For reals? For 13 days, the world teetered on the edge of nuclear destruction. The United States and the Soviet Union both held their fingers over the button in one of the world's most intense standoffs known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. The hero of the crisis is today's topic, Principle of Abundance number 4, Presence over Panic. If you haven't seen the Kevin Costner film 13 Days, I highly recommend it. On October 14th, 1962, an American U-2 spy plane captured photographs of nuclear missile installations on the island of Cuba, just 90 miles away, capable of reaching 1,000 miles into the U.S.
Cities and military installations in the southeast, as far north as Washington, D.C., are in range of these weapons.
Understandably, fear was the immediate response.
We have a gun to our head.
Kennedy's military and civilian advisors were split, many pushing for immediate airstrikes and invasion. Kennedy paused and looked beyond the immediate emotion of doing something. He asked, what will the world look like if we act and they respond?
I think one of their ships resists the inspection. And we shoot out its rudder and board. They shoot down one of our planes in response. So we bomb their anti-aircraft sites in response to that. They attack Berlin. So we invade Cuba. And they fire their missiles. And we fire ours.
But the president's advisors insisted that
it's our duty, sir, our responsibility to the American people to take out those missiles and return stability to the strategic situation. The big red dog is digging in our backyard, and we are justified in shooting him.
Resisting demands for immediate actions from the generals, he stepped back far enough to see the full chain reaction play out. Kennedy deliberately bought time. The president pulled in the best advisors he had.
We've got a bunch of smart guys. We lock them in a room and kick them in the ass until they come up with some solutions.
Meanwhile, the countdown was real. The Soviets are racing to get the missiles online. The White House was left guessing just how long they have before the missiles are operational. If they become operational...
Missiles only take 5 minutes to get here.
So Kennedy calls in the Soviet ambassador to try to probe their intent and position without letting on that he knows about the missiles in Cuba. But the ambassador toes the party line.
Assured you our military assistance to Cuba is of a defensive nature only.
What happened?
Lying bastard. Lied right to my face.
Put a pin in that for now. So the military ramps up, preparing for war, because...
Soviet understands only one language, action. Respects only one word, force.
Many of Kennedy's advisors were politicians and generals. But there was also one diplomat, Adlai Stevenson, the president's ambassador to the UN. He was in the room, one of those smart guys. But Adlai had a problem. He wanted to live.
There is a third option. With either course, we undertake the risk of nuclear war. So it seems to me that maybe one of us in this room should be a coward. So I guess I'll be. A third course is to strike a deal.
But in a room of alpha egos, this looks like mere capitulation.
I did hear, Adlai. Jesus, you think nobody learned anything from World War II?
Well, somebody had to say it. I respect Adlai for having the guts to risk looking like an appeaser.
When everyone is demanding military action, Adlai was calm. Panic is contagious.
Those goddamn Kennedys are going to destroy this country if we don't do something about this.
Presence is equally contagious, but stabilizing.
I'm a political dead man. Did you ever see anyone cut his own throat like I did today? No. It's all right.
The plan was simple. They removed the missiles in Cuba, we promised not to invade, and we removed the missiles that we had placed in Turkey less than a year before. Put a note in that. But the consensus was...
I don't think that's possible, Adlai.
Spoiler alert. It takes everyone a long time to get there, but Adlai's plan is actually what saves the day. Barely. But first, we have to go through a series of escalations. The president makes his announcement on TV. He puts a public spotlight on the Russians, portraying them as the big bad wolf, the aggressors, the bad guys. He also puts a quarantine around Cuba. Not a naval blockade, because that would be an act of war. But this quarantine corners Khrushchev publicly and out on the water. It is tense. Some Russian ships try to run the blockade, escorted by nuclear submarines. The U.S. uses practice depth charges to force them to the surface and run them off. Eventually, all the ships do turn around, but not without some scary moments. In the meantime, a number of global chess pieces are also being played. The U.S. goes to DEFCON 2, one step below nuclear launch readiness. The nuclear forces specifically do eventually go to DEFCON 1. There's a massive U.S. troop mobilization in Florida, over 180,000 soldiers preparing for invasion. Bombers are armed and circling with live nuclear payloads. Photos are published in the media to counter any Russian denials of the nukes in Cuba. Because the Russian ambassador lost credibility, the Kremlin reaches out to the White House through its top KGB officer in the U.S. to try to broker a deal. This back channel seems sus as hell. Kennedy's advisors were split on whether this was a legitimate deal or just a delay tactic while they get the Cuban missiles operational, which they did.
The first missiles became operational last night.
On October 26th, the U.S. conducts a nuclear test, detonating a bomb out in the Marshall Islands. The film portrays this as an accident or oversight. We forgot to cancel the pre-scheduled test. But I have a hard time thinking this was not a calculated message, a 20-kiloton reminder to the Russians about what's at stake.
What the hell is this?
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
The next day, a U-2 spy plane is chased out of Russian airspace. The pilot was off course due to a navigational error. Another U-2 is shot down over Cuba that day. This amped up tension significantly because they killed our pilot. According to the rules of engagement, the generals demanded a retaliatory response.
We must order punitive airstrikes against the SAM site that shot down Major Anderson, per our rules of engagement.
But Kennedy said no. The next day, the deal was made. Remember Adley's deal?
While there can be no quid pro quo on this issue, the United States can offer a private assurance. Now, our Jupiter missiles in Turkey are obsolete and have been scheduled for withdrawal for some time. This withdrawal should take place within, say, 6 months. Of course, any public disclosure of this assurance would negate the deal and produce the most stringent denials from our government.
There were many heroes in this crisis. Kennedy was certainly one of them. My favorite in this film portrayal is Adley, but there's one main hero that our American movie leaves out: the relatively unknown story of Vasily Arkhipov. Let's go back to Black Saturday. That's the day before the deal, the day after the nuclear test when we had the 2 U-2 incidents where we lost a pilot. Tensions are at their peak. Vasily is second in command of B-59, a Soviet Foxtrot-class submarine assigned to escort ships through the blockade. Now, if you've ever seen the movie U-571, you can imagine the extreme anxiety and fear of living below the surface with ships dropping depth charges all around you. B-59 has not surfaced for several days, so they are operating in the dark with no new information. Whatever mechanical issues were going on caused temperatures to reach 110 degrees. Sailors were passing out from the heat and low oxygen levels. With depth charges exploding all around them, they came to the conclusion that the war had started. If true, it was their duty to fire the T-5 nuclear torpedo. The captain ordered it, the political officer agreed, but they needed the consent of one other man, Vasily. Reportedly, they had a hell of a tense exchange, but Vasily ultimately refused to push the button. So they surfaced, got some fresh air, and left the area without being fired upon by the American Armada. And no one, not in Moscow, not in Washington, realizes that one quiet act of presence saved billions of lives. It's one of the most extraordinary and least known acts of calm leadership in human history. Vasily Arkhipov, the Soviet naval officer whose presence quite literally saved the world during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Panic demands domination, control over the situation.
This is the real world. You know that better than anybody.
Presence pauses. It accepts uncertainty. Fear of the unknown, which is one of the most unsettling human emotions. It sees the whole board, not just the next impulsive reaction. It balances strength with empathy. As red-blooded American as I am, after researching and understanding the full context, I actually consider the Russians to be the more present, lesser aggressors during the crisis. Remember when the Russian ambassador said that there were only defensive weapons in Cuba? He may have been telling the truth. The missiles were not intended to be used as first-strike weapons. They were a defense and a deterrent to prevent first-strike weapons from being used on his family back in Russia. Remember the new missile systems we placed in Turkey less than a year ago? It's likely that we installed them not to start a war and kill Russians, but as a defensive deterrent. We didn't fire on Russia as soon as they were set up, so does that make it defensive? Technically, yes-ish. But under that same line of reasoning, Russia also did not fire the Cuban missiles, even though they became operational in the last few days of the crisis. It's not a hardline position for the Russians to think that the missiles in Turkey could be...
Leave a gun to our head.
From military movements to aggressive overflights to blockades to public demonizations to nuclear tests, America certainly escalated quickly, perhaps necessarily, but it's a hell of a gamble to roll the dice like that when the whole planet is at stake.
They look warlike? Jesus Christ, we're lighting off nuclear weapons like it's our own private 4th of July.
Kennedy's demand that the trade for Turkey remain a secret was hard for me to stomach. It was clearly deceptive and concerning to the Russians.
You want war?
Will he keep his promise, or is it just a delay tactic? The Russians accepted that saving face was not worth destroying the human race. But did we learn the same lesson? Would Kennedy actually risk potential extinction in order to maintain the illusion of power and control on the world stage? The Russians dropped their ego and backed down. Why would we not do the same? This still disturbs me about America. The same top advisors who were inciting fear of the monstrous hardline Russian leaders who cannot be reasoned with are the same ones demanding that Kennedy pull the trigger.
They want a war, Jack, and they're arranging things to get one.
Mere hardline reflections of each other, immature, scared children, actively perpetuating the very thing they claim to oppose. The worst part of it, they can't even see it, and oftentimes neither can we. As humans, we're hardwired to believe we're doing the right thing. This drive to do the right thing certainly aids humanity in many ways, but it's also a two-edged sword. In service of God, we have justified the world's worst atrocities, and we concoct some very elaborate narratives that justify it. But like all principles, if we want presence reflected in society, we must first foster it within ourselves and those we interact with. When I left the Army in 2017, I was exploring some of these principles to better understand myself and who I want to be in the world. As a young Mormon kid, I went into the Army straight out of college as a military intelligence officer. Later, as a captain, I learned Arabic and worked as a foreign area officer out of the embassy in Jordan. I got to travel across the Middle East and Central Asia, studying the complexities of the various cultures, economies, ideologies, conflicts, and humanity of the region. I have a passion for storytelling, so after leaving the Army, I wrote a couple movies in an attempt to portray the reality of survival within those matrices. The first one was Warrior of Allah. It follows Ali, a young Sunni living in Mosul, Iraq, as ISIS rolls onto the world stage. Ali, his brother Rahim, their sister, and grandfather survived the American invasion, but live in hopelessness. No idea how to build a future under the oppressive Shia government that is still exacting revenge on the Sunni population for the years of shame they faced under Saddam. Targeted arrests, detentions, extrajudicial killings, corruption, humiliation, torture, and extortion. Raised by their grandfather, they struggle to simply exist. But when you live too long under one kind of fear, sometimes you mistake another for freedom. That's the story of Mosul. Perceived as the liberator of Mosul, tens of thousands join the ranks of ISIS, including Ali and his brother. But the liberator quickly becomes the tyrant. Bitter and scared, his brother embraces the caliphate, becoming a rising star, an ISIS commander, while Ali tries to reconcile their brutality with his own humanity. In the name of purity, they erased color. In the name of faith, they killed mercy. In building paradise, they created hell. Like Nazi Germany, informant culture prevailed. It was fear that ruled the city. By chance, Ali saves the life of a powerful sheikh, who in turn purchases a Yazidi bride for him as a gift. Forced to accept her, Ali doesn't know what to do with her. He sees her, another broken human in need of protection, but his heart craves love and not a slave. Seeing Ali struggle, his grandfather, a retired imam, confides in Ali. He had worked as an informant for the Americans during the occupation, despite the fact that they had killed Ali's parents at a checkpoint. Angry and confused, Ali once again has to decide between the lesser of two evils. He reluctantly begins working with an American intelligence officer, calling in drone strikes on ISIS leaders. The problem is, his brother is one of them, and the Americans know it. Not that he's his brother, but they want this Commander Rahim dead. American pressure for an ISIS body count is strong, and informants like Ali become expendable. Ali's handler knows he's not transparent, but he can't figure out why Ali is protecting Rahim and slow to call in targets that he clearly has access to. Facing his own pressure, he also has to resist military demands for targets that risk Ali's exposure. Jason Bourne? He is not. A scared, reluctant, rookie spy, Ali works for ISIS, training children to avoid suspicion and maintain access while trying to save his brother and remove a few ISIS leaders. Ali's survival requires duplicity and deception. Any accusation or sign of resistance to ISIS will result in not just death for him and his family, but something far worse for his little sister and Yazidi bride. Something Ali's personal faith cannot allow. Knowing yourself so you can practice presence in the right moments was a theme I was exploring as I wrote the film. The script was about curiosity, understanding why tens of thousands flocked to the caliphate. To them, it must have been a rational decision. All conflict stems from nothing more than reinforced thought patterns. Patterns we have all perpetuated within ourselves at some point. Suffering victims, creating more victims. Like the series Mindhunter, why would we not study those patterns so we can more effectively address the issue? Ideally with less bombs. The human mind craves certainty and simplicity. It wants to sort the world into good versus evil, safe and dangerous, us versus them. It's a comforting illusion, the idea that all virtue belongs to one side and darkness to the other. Now I know that Rami Malek, Matthew McConaughey, and Woody Harrelson are beyond my stadium, but let a guy dream. But if you'd like to see this movie made, pass the link along to your cousin's nephew's uncle's orangutan who works in Hollywood. And Maddie, we got work to do. One last story, not a war story. I know I'm not the only one who's been through a painful divorce. I'm not here to spill the tea or air laundry. I want to discuss the normal, overarching dynamic that I'm certain millions of us have gone through. We were 19 years into this thing, but life changes all of us, and it should. Divorce forces us to face an uncertain future. It's scary as hell for everyone involved. I'm certain my ex must also have felt like the divorce was our own Cuban crisis. 3 years later, I still reflect on both of our escalations, trying to figure out how two people who were once so closely aligned, 7 kids in, could be so at odds with each other. Me leaving Mormonism attacked the very stability she had relied on for nearly 2 decades. The perfect fairy tale of what love is supposed to be that all religions preach and sometimes impose. Dreams we all want to believe in that become our narratives and our identity. How could she not be scared? But I just could not continue in some of the doctrinal and cultural aspects of the religion that I no longer aligned with. Mormonism had always provided the foundation of the marriage, and there were beautiful aspects of it. Strong family values that fed us both. Things that I still value and miss. I remember laying face down on the couch on Saturday mornings, watching SpongeBob with a small gaggle of kids perched up on top of me like turtles on a log with their off-brand cereal. Elbowing and jockeying for position in blankets. Feeling that spilled milk soaking through. My stupid giggles turning to bouncing laughter. Feeling the flow of clumsy toddlers spilled breakfast onto my back. God, we were present, living in the moment. Although there was chaos, nobody was really mad. Mom in her chair with a baby hooked up, not even attempting to help because she was too entertained by the kids, who moments before were jabbing each other, but are now united in blame of the cereal-soaked idiot they're all sitting on. And how did it all go so wrong? To this day, I still contemplate those answers. But as is common in divorces, family, friends, and attorneys all want to chime in. Professionals, convincingly advocating the same scorched earth approach as the hardline generals whispering in the ears of Kennedy and Khrushchev. As much as I tried to stay present, I felt real fear, and I'm certain she did too. Both sides fighting to be seen and valued by the other, each projecting our flaws and insecurities in different ways. Like Kennedy, I had to push back on my attorneys and slow the pace at times. But it's tempting to take their valid legal advice. It allows us to pretend that it's the attorney causing the damage, not me. When hit with opposing escalations, pausing over and over again and not assuming the worst is hard as hell, especially when the attorneys tell you how foolish and catastrophic it will be to not pull the trigger. Olive branches are offered, but trust is low, so they appear to be received as weaknesses to be exploited instead of ceasefire agreements while we find some space to move forward. Each side believes they are the noble good guy as they justify their own escalations. We dehumanize the opposition and attribute all of their actions to maliciousness, which does exist out there. After the separation, I recall going on a date with a girl I thought was way out of my league. Knockout beautiful. I was pretty damn excited. She was still struggling through her own divorce. She mentioned several times that she was fighting over a pool table. I love to play pool, so I'm like, you like to play? And she's like, no. It became clear to me that the only reason she wanted a pool table was to hurt him. It's a first date, so my only investment at this point is a few Hinge messages and a couple chili rellenos, but I knew right then I had lost interest. Her need to take that table felt ego-driven and malicious. It was all his fault, and he needed to pay. It's a date, so I'm just going to listen and be sympathetic. I have no horse in this race. Like Kennedy's nukes in Turkey, there was no recognition of how her need to blame, dominate, and punish just might have contributed to her current situation. When maliciousness is present, calculated escalations may be necessary. My only point is that we should be cautious about jumping to that conclusion when reality may be they are simply scared and trying to protect themselves. It's basic human nature to blame them for XYZ and forget or justify our own ABCs. I'm sure each divorce has its own pool table, boat, car, house, or trust fund. The hardest issue of all is often custody. TikTok is full of nightmare stories of savage custody battles. My fear is that oftentimes we watch them to secretly feed our fears and justify escalations. It feels good when everyone piles on in support, completely dismissing the fact that this person is only presenting one side of a very complex issue. We soak these stories up as affirmations of what we want to feel instead of cautionary tales to learn from. We all know couples who live in Cold War-style marriages, afraid to trust each other and tear down complex, well-crafted fortifications, believing that decades-long stalemates are preferable to mutually assured destruction. The ability to step back, observe our emotions, and not react takes practice, especially in relationships where emotions should run high. If you've never been a fool in love, I highly recommend it. As a top divorce attorney says,
everything you love, you're going to lose someday.
Right.
So to love something is to accept the inevitability that it's going to break your heart someday. And yet we do it anyway because it's the best thing.
Because life is better with them.
Right. So to me, like, that makes it more beautiful to say, you know what? If you break my heart, it will have been worth it.
Yeah.
It will have been worth it because we got to do this.
Sold.
So the next time you feel triggered by what feels like a provocative escalation in your relationship, slow things down, pause, get curious, and consider what dynamic you have been perpetuating that has them so scared. Presence over panic. Give it a shot.
Well, what should we do now?